Good morning, and welcome to the Corner Table. We're all familiar with Inglis House on City Avenue. It provides medical care as well as other services for its residents. It's been around since 1877 when Annie Inglis, who spent her life in a wheelchair, asked her mother to establish a home for children with disabilities. Well, today, Inglis House has gone from just a facility for youngsters to a foundation, and that foundation reaches out to the community in general in so many ways. The Inglis Foundation is the parent corporation for a host of profit and nonprofit organizations. Dan McGee is the foundation's Assistant Director of Public Relations. And we'll talk to Dan about Inglis House and the foundation and its programs right after this. Good morning, and welcome to the Corner Table. We're all familiar with Inglis House on City Avenue. It provides medical care as well as other services for its residents. It's been around since 1877 when Annie Inglis, who spent her life in a wheelchair, asked her mother to establish a home for children with disabilities. Well, today, Inglis House has gone from just a facility for youngsters to a foundation, and that foundation reaches out to the community in general in so many ways. The Inglis Foundation is the parent corporation for a host of profit and nonprofit organizations. Dan McGee is the foundation's Assistant Director of Public Relations. And we'll talk to Dan about Inglis House and the foundation and its programs right after this. Okay, now we're on the right track. Okay. Dan, welcome to the show. It's nice to have you at the Corner Table for this Saturday morning.
Thank you very much, Art. I'm very happy to be here.
Now, as I mentioned, Inglis House has been around since 1877. Give us a little background of how it began, what it did originally, and then we can talk a little bit about what it is today. And it's so much more than what it was.
Absolutely. It's been quite an evolution over the past just over 130 years. In the 1870s, there was an Inglis family who lived in the Delaware Valley region, and they had a daughter named Annie Inglis, who, as a result of scarlet fever, lived most of her very young life in a wheelchair. And it was her dream that one day, because there was no such place, that there be a place that could care for sick and disabled children who used wheelchairs. The family was pretty wealthy, and they were very involved with philanthropic endeavors. As a matter of fact, Annie's mother did volunteer work for the old Philadelphia nursing home, which was down, I believe, around 5th and Market area. And it was there that Annie, who had been in a wheelchair by that point for several years, first saw another person use a wheelchair. So she really wanted to have a place where folks like herself could live together and receive the necessary care. Unfortunately, her condition deteriorated, and before she turned 18, she became very ill, and she gave her mother a gold coin and asked her mother to auction that gold coin off to raise funds that one day there would be a place for folks with disabilities standing in the city of Philadelphia to provide care.
Now, the Inglis facility is on City Avenue at Belmont, if I'm not mistaken.
It's actually just off City Avenue on Belmont.
Belmont,
Yes,
right.
yes,
Right.
yes. And that is not the original location, however.
Oh, where was it? Where was it?
Well, it was still in Philadelphia.
Right.
2 years after Annie's death is when the first Inglis House opened in 1877. The original location was at 46th and Darby Road. Remained there for a couple years,
Okay.
and then they received quite a number of applicants, and it was in a rented house. And they couldn't handle all the, obviously the house needed modifications for the wheelchairs, and their census was growing, so they needed to purchase another property just 2 blocks away at 48th and Darby Road. And it stayed there until 1927 into 1928 when the current facility was being built.
Now, what are the qualifications for persons who want to apply to stay at Inglis House? How does a person get to take advantage of the facility that we know now on Belmont Avenue?
Right. Well, our services are specifically designed for adults with physical disabilities. Inglis House used to be home to children. It no longer is. The youngest person, the average age usually is around 50.
Okay.
The youngest person can be as young as 17. But folks that live at Inglis House are wheelchair dependent, so whatever physical conditions, a lot of folks have multiple sclerosis, spinal cord injury, cerebral palsy, other neurodegenerative diseases that would result in someone using a wheelchair. So our services at Inglis House are designed for folks where they come to live. It is a nursing home, but it's a specialized, skilled nursing home and the care is specifically targeted towards a younger population of adults who use wheelchairs. So it's not a typical nursing home, you know, a geriatric facility.
Right.
The average age is probably in the early 80s, where
Right.
at Inglis House the average age is only around 50, 51.
Yeah.
And our care is pretty comprehensive because obviously it's 24-hour medical and nursing care, but on top of that there's also a rehabilitative program which offers occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech therapy, therapeutic recreation, and there's a whole wide range of social enrichment programs, such as there's a comprehensive education program which is very popular, where folks who live there can actually even get their college degree right on site through Newman College.
The facility has a great reputation, and I'm glad that you've taken the time out this Saturday morning to allow us to delve into a little bit of what Inglis House is all about, because people know it, but they really don't know it.
Right.
And I would be willing to bet that even fewer are aware of the Inglis Foundation.
Yes, yes. The Inglis Foundation, it used to be, well, it still is, the fundraising arm. Inglis,
Right.
The Inglis organization is a nonprofit organization. But Inglis Foundation, which is the parent corporation,
Right.
and also the fundraising entity, what we found was obviously a lot, especially in the last 15, 20 years, there was a great need for services for people with physical disabilities who lived in the community. Somebody with a wheelchair who lived at home, you know, didn't necessarily need, not every person with who uses a wheelchair needs long-term care. So
right.
obviously a lot of folks, you know, folks with disabilities, especially nowadays, are getting jobs, they're having careers, having lives as they should, but still might need some services, with the main thrust for them to maintain their independence and live in their home longer and avoid living in a nursing home or other rehab facilities. So Inglis recognized that, and like many other service providers in the Delaware Valley area, there was obviously a great need for community-based services. So the Inglis organization evolved in the 90s, well actually even earlier. As early as 1975, we opened our first fully independent living wheelchair accessible apartments on the Inglis campus. Right.
That's
on
terrific.
Avenue, yeah.
Is there an economic threshold that people have to meet before they can take advantage of the services, or do you work with Medicare, Medicaid?
Right. Well, folks for Inglis House, which is the skilled nursing home,
Right.
Facility, yes, that is a Medicare, Medicaid reimbursement operation. So most 99% of our residents who live there are there on medical assistance.
Okay.
Other programs, there's especially for folks. Well, if I can, I would like to mention some of the other community
Certainly,
services.
please do.
There's,
Absolutely.
Fully independent living apartments. It's not assisted living, it's independent living. So it's basically like anybody on the street that wants to go try to find an apartment, you know, you're living independently when you get your first apartment.
Correct.
So folks with disabilities can apply to an Inglis Housing Corporation, it's the entity name, for an independent living apartment, which is fully wheelchair accessible, beyond industry requirements. So there are absolutely no wheelchair obstacles in these apartments at all. Over the years, since '75 when they first started, they've grown. We have apartment complexes throughout the Delaware Valley area. Most of them are in the city of Philadelphia.
But they're in the suburbs as well.
Some are in the suburbs.
Okay.
We a few years ago we branched off into Evesham, New Jersey.
Wonderful.
There's single-family dwellings in the Reading area in Berks County. We also have several apartment complexes, like I said, in Philadelphia, down in the Eastwick section by the airport, and the Germantown and Mount Airy section. And they are, again, like I said, fully independent living apartments. So folks can move in there. In some instances, there is a rental subsidy, so it makes it a little more affordable for them.
Right.
But in addition to that, Art, there's also other services that Inglis provides, aside from Inglis House. We have an adult...
Before you go on,
Sure.
I want to just, because I know I can hear listeners screaming, how can I take advantage of this?
Yes.
What's the telephone number? Who do I write to? So let's talk a little bit about that, and then we'll go on to the other services.
Sure. Well, you can find out about Inglis services by logging onto our website,
Okay.
which is www.inglis.org, and Inglis is INGLIS. www.inglis.org.
Okay.
Or you can dial toll free. You can dial 1-866-2-INGLIS, INGLIS.
Can't get any easier than that.
Yes, and